I'm Sid Goldberg from Earth Mystery News, and with us today is Tracy. Tracy comes from a professional background in gaming and design from an industry-leading gaming company. Presently, Tracy is an honors student in interdisciplinary social sciences with a focus in psychology and international studies. Also, Tracy is an experiencer, contactee, and explorer of consciousness. Tracy, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
So I love the topic of contact and experiencers. Tracy, how would you define it for yourself?
That's a big question. Contact and experience to me is having a direct experience with something or someone or some being outside of the consensus reality or perhaps terrestrial-based reality. There's
a whole scale of experiences. Some people have very 3D experiences where they might see a craft, they might see beings come through the wall in their room, they may even be left with physical marks. Some people, and people that I've worked with for a TV project that we're creating, have actually had something implanted under their skin, and we could actually surgically remove it, analyze it, and come across anomalies that are not normal. That's one level of it. The other levels get more subtle. They're energetic, perhaps. They're happening in a conscious state, but something's different and shifts. It could be while they're sleeping in dreams, and yet there's a vividness to it that's unlike any other dream. And then those people where they feel like they are going into the universe somewhere. They're experiencing something outside the limitation of their body, and there's a lot to be learned. Where on that sliding scale are yours?
It's actually all of the above. I have had, I've had different types of experiences, so these are not all sort of extraterrestrial-based experiences, but I've meditated for over 10 years now, quite seriously, and, I've had some very deep experiences in those types of states. I've had some extremely, I would call high-def, lucid dreams that upon waking, there is nothing in my body that believes that it was a dream, except that in my consensus reality, that was a dream, So I have had a lot of experiences that fall in those categories. I have a more difficult time talking about those because even for me, I have a hard time fully validating them,
So let's start with the physical 3D ones. And expand from there.
Yeah, the 3D one is the one I am most comfortable talking about because I had someone with me. I actually had a witness, fully conscious, not in any of those altered states. So that one, just to jump right into it, very interesting. I was with a friend. We were just sitting in their living room, in her living room, and sitting side by side on a couch. Her TV was actually quite far away. So it was, I don't know, I'm gonna guess 12 feet away, something like that. On an angle, we were watching a documentary. We were quite into the documentary, and it's very hard to describe this, so I'm gonna do my best to articulate it as best I can. The experience is challenging to get out exactly how it happened, so people can sort of feel that for themselves. But we're watching it. The next thing I know, there was a full being, very tall being, that stood between us and the TV.
Very tall means what?
Tall. Okay, so obviously I didn't have a perfect point of reference. I wasn't looking out for this, and I was not expecting this to happen. But way over the TV. So to me, I am speculating this being was probably at least 7 feet tall. That's how I perceive it anyways. They were, it's hard to describe the quality of this, but I'm going to try. Because it's not like I saw you standing there here I am. It was more of a flash of you. So my brain registered what it could.
So you saw as if it was a shadow or like a light. Was it detailed with eyes and nose? Can you give me more descriptives?
Okay, I would say this. It was a full being. It was a full being that stood before me. It was a flash, but it was like a slow flash. But I could not register facial features or anything like that. I more registered overall. My mind picked out black, so it didn't feel like a shadow. It actually felt like that's what the being was wearing. And I really don't like saying this detail, but it is just the truth of it. There was a hood. The being was wearing a hood, and so what happened was I found myself. I can best describe this as frozen, and what was happening inside was a part of me was sort of saying, that's a projection of the TV and trying to suppress it and write it off. And at the same moment, another part of me was saying, no, I saw that. So I was having this kind of interesting thing happen. And it wasn't like a dream that was fading away. It was almost like a part of me was actively trying to push that down. It was like a conflict. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. There was just this thing going on. And I finally felt like I fought through it. And I went, oh my God, did you see that? To her. And she just looked frozen. And then she went, oh my God, I was trying to write that off as a projection of the TV. So she actually used the exact same words that were going on in my head, which, now on debriefing and thinking about this for a few years, I find that very interesting.
So Tracy, tell me, in that frozen state that you were experiencing it and your friend beside you was this daytime or nighttime, first of all?
This was nighttime. Well, all the lights were on in the room.
All the lights were on in the room, so it would be almost like I'm seeing you right now on screen, maybe a bit dimmer.
The room was very bright. It wasn't like we were watching a movie, so they weren't all on, but it was a very bright room. I don't usually watch TV like that at night, but that's how it was at her house. It was her house, so yeah, it was a bright room.
So it's a bright room. This being is hooded.
Yeah.
Do you see any definition to the face, to the body? So if it's hooded, what, they were wearing robes? How were they dressed?
My mind picked it up as a robe. But again, I'm hesitant to fill it in with details, so I'm sort of trying to report it exactly as I perceived it. And
did you see hands or feet?
No. So I know what you're driving for here, and could I tell if it was sort of a human or a humanoid type being? And no. And we have talked about this in depth, and we can't pull it out.
You and your friend have talked about it in depth.
Yeah, we can't pull it out. I mean, all the details were identical. The hood, the black, where they stood. We went and stood, of course, in the room. It was about 3/4 of the way from us, about 1/4 of the way from the TV.
Do you have a sense, Tracy, how long that experience went on? Because if you were in this frozen state, both of you, for the same amount of time, where you could not look or engage each other, you were watching a movie, so you have a sense of how much of the movie passed. Can you guess how long this was going on for?
No. The reason is because we were so in shock. The movie didn't exist anymore. So, by the time we thought of that, we had been talking and sort of coping and comparing notes, and so we had no idea. I mean, it's too bad. Obviously, nowadays I know more, and I would think about those measurements, but at the time it was so raw, and we have no idea. And all I can say is that I can only sort of say what I feel. I don't know this, but I feel from the feeling inside of having that sort of trapped inner world that something may have happened before that. It didn't feel like, boom, all of a sudden I'm frozen. Like I didn't have any awareness of becoming frozen. You know what I mean? I only had the awareness at the end of the experience. So to me, there was a part of the experience missing. Otherwise, I would have, had a feeling of it about to happen, or going into the state.
Is the other part of the experience that you sense happen but you can't articulate specifically, are you feeling that this is the same day that happened, or is it possible it happened another time and this was a revisitation of that, continuation of that?
I mean, that's a great question, because really anything is possible. And really everything that the way we're looking at this, of course, is all human constructs and all based on human paradigms and everything we've been socialized to know. So that is a very difficult thing to answer. My gut feeling is that it was something that happened then, but again, that's pure speculation. I don't know.
And if we try and go back to the movie as a cross-reference point,
yeah.
Do you have recollection of the movie? Did you love the movie? Did you not? Like, there's something missing if some time frame is in there. Have you ever put that piece of time frame together?
If I was watching a movie with a plot, I may have noticed more, but it was a documentary.
I'm curious to know that there's some people that would qualify their own experience of some sort of solidish, semi-ethereal perhaps form in front of them as ghostly.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenon and a level of consciousness, and some people measure that with all kinds of equipment these days and everything. And then there's the ET connection, an intelligence that's not of our world, not spirit, but actually extraterrestrial. What do you feel your experience is?
Okay, well, I'm glad you're bringing that up. And, ultimately, how can I really make that distinction? But based on my past experience, and I know there's a lot that you don't know about me, but I have had experiences for a lot of my life that were sort of out of the normal realms and things that I don't typically talk about because of how they're often perceived. But a lot of earlier experiences were more of those realms. And I just want to say that, again, this is just for me, there is a completely different feel of what I experienced that day.
How do you discriminate between what's that ethereal, spiritual, ghost-like experience versus what might be the ET one that is this hooded being in front of you?
I think it's potentially only something that you know when it happens, have the experience. It just feels different. Let me say this too, just to add this in. From the experiences I've had in the past that will qualify as spirit, right? And this experience, there was something different also in the feel of intent. Again, after having thought about this ET, classifying it there, experience, the fact that this being was so perfectly standing in our line of view with the TV says it has an implication to me that there was meant to be a conscious trace of this. There was a conscious purpose to this. I have never experienced that quite like that with any of the other types of experiences where it just has a more fluid feel. This was more serious. It had a far more serious tone to it.
Is there a takeaway from that experience that clearly left an emotional imprint either while it was happening or afterwards, or even a message or understanding?
I felt light. I felt good. There's nothing heavy, dark. All of the things that you would...
So even in that frozen state, Even in that
Yeah.
sort of lockdown, frozen state where you couldn't react, you couldn't turn to your friend, there was no fear.
No.
There was no sense of shock, awe. Rather, what I'm getting from you is a sense of familiarity and comfort, possibly?
Yeah.
Or was
Well,
it neutral?
I was in a very neutral place. I wasn't judging the experience there. But I could definitely say it wasn't an unfamiliar, stranger, I want this out of here threat. It wasn't a threat in any way. I would say, neutral, but on the side of positive.
So tell me about your friend now. She's
Okay.
beside you. What'd you talk about afterwards?
So yeah, it was the first thing I did after I sort of pulled myself out and was, I pounced on her, but at first I looked at her and she's just in this state. And so I'm like, Maria, did you see that? And it's almost like I had a moment to watch everything that was going on in my head. I watched with her because it's like she was stuck. And then when I said that to her, it was like she, took this breath of back. She was back here and saying, "Oh my gosh," I was, I was sort of thinking it was a projection of the TV. Maybe I was trying to write it off. But I saw it. Same thing.
So you're saying you didn't even want to believe it?
Yeah. No. I think we did. It's just that is the part that neither of us can understand. Why was a part of us trying to write it off and even using the same words? It suggests to me, now I'm just saying that maybe, it possibly suggests or begs the question, could that have been suggested to us? This was a projection of the TV,
I wanted to actually ask that question. I'm curious to know what that documentary was, and maybe somebody watching has had a similar experience with the same documentary. Now, wouldn't that be mind-blowing?
The documentary, it was actually called Contact.
Oh.
So isn't that funny? It was James Gilliland and his documentary called Contact. When I had seen it the first time, it was a turning point for me because prior to that, I was actually really afraid of anyone talking about anything extraterrestrial around me whatsoever. I was a product of what the media was putting out there, and I was really scared of hearing people talk about this. When I watched this documentary, I can't remember what prompted it. I think at least a couple of years before, it really changed. It made me feel more comfortable. It made me feel more relaxed.
Because a lot of people have experiences, and even the so-called tangible three-dimensional ones, because we won't even, go into those other dimensional ones right now, but even when somebody has an experience, immediately that sense of doubt comes in. It's like, was that real, and what was that? And clearly, at what point did you, and I don't know if your friend has, but at what point do you own the experience and say, this was real, this was mine, there isn't doubt anymore because of all the things that I filtered and questioned and revisited and re-asked. This is all it could be. At what point do you own it, and what made you own it?
Okay, well, for experiences in the past that I would classify as, other beings, otherworldly beings, I had a lot more of that where I would question it because they would come through meditation and lucid dreams and that type of thing. But I can tell you, this is one experience that there is nothing in me that went through that process. It happened. I'll tell you, I have been very shy to share my experiences, and also,
why?
Because especially one like this, I'm very protective because this is my experience. This experience was so dramatic, and I will never be the same from this experience. Moving forward, this changes my worldview, and I can't allow anyone to dilute that for me. It's such an interesting discussion, really, because I just know what I felt. I know how it affected me, and that's basically what it comes down to, how it affected me and how I moved forward, after having that experience.
You said that it's something that has shifted you moving forward in life. Is that something that you can describe and say what that is?
Well, I think once you've had, you can write off some of your experiences that happen in dreams and stuff. Once you have a being, and even spirit, you can almost write that off for yourself sometimes, right? But when you have a three-dimensional being that you feel is otherworldly, but is a literal being, that could walk around your room and pick you up, you know that this paradigm that you've come to know is not the only one. And I think you start to reevaluate all of your parameters, your own consciousness. You start to reevaluate a lot of things in your life and what's important to you even. It's affected me in so many ways, to be honest.
So Tracy, on that note of consciousness, expansion, and universal thinking, which this experience actually shifted you into, having that being in front of you, on that thought, I'd like to thank you very much, because being able to talk about this openly by credible people like yourself, by respectable people like yourself, makes all the difference. And I think the more people are willing to share their story, the more we're going to learn that there are a lot of other people out there with very similar experiences. So on behalf of earthmysterynews.com, I want to thank you very much, because this is your first time coming out, so to speak, and sharing it publicly on camera. And we can't thank you enough for your honesty, your truth, and your sharing.